Unit 6, Day 1, Slope. So the learning goal for today's lesson is to teach you guys how to calculate the slope of a line using the rate triangle method. Slope is basically the measure of how steep something is. Okay, so if you have a really steep hill that you need to walk up, it's going to have a very large slope. If you have a not so steep hill that you need to walk up, it's going to have a not so large slope. Slope is present in a lot of areas of our daily life. For example, your roof on your house has a slope, hills have a slope, stairs and ramps have a slope. Okay, so here's how to calculate slope, or to calculate how steep something is. Okay, so to calculate slope, this is the formula that you use. It's rise divided by run, and you're going to use what's called a rate triangle method. Now we're going to do a few examples in a second that explain this method, but just as a quick introduction, the rate triangle method, basically what you do is you calculate the rise of the line. So let's say you're trying to calculate the slope of this line. You want to calculate first how many units it increases by, and then how many units it increases on the horizontal plane. And you're going to get numbers for both those values. And then you just plug those numbers into this equation to find your slope. Okay, so don't worry if that didn't make too much sense. I'm going to show you this in a few examples later. The only other thing that I want you to realize is the larger the slope number, the more steep the line is. Okay, and you'll see that on this picture here. So this yellow line, the slope is at 0. And then look at this green line is a lot steeper than that yellow line was. And look, its slope is bigger. Now it's up to a slope of 1. And then obviously, as you get into these blue lines, it's a lot steeper, so the slope is going to be greater than 1. When you get a slope or a line that is going in the negative direction, so it's facing down and to the right, the slope is always going to be negative. Okay? So as you can see, all these yellow lines and orange lines and red lines follow that trend. They go down and to the right. So their slopes are all going to be negative numbers. Okay, so to summarize, just know that the steeper the line, the greater the slope number. And then if the line goes down and to the right, it's going to have a negative slope number. Okay, so here's a summary of the difference between a negative slope and a positive slope. So positive slope is when the line rises to the right. So if you look at the first picture, and you read it from left to right, you can see that the line goes up and to the right. So that would be a positive slope example. Okay? The opposite of that is a negative slope. So anytime you read a graph going left to right and you see the line going down and to the right, that's a negative slope. So when you do your calculation, make sure it has a negative number in your final answer. Okay, let's get into some examples now, actually using that formula and calculating the slope. So, question 1, determine the slope of the following rate triangle. So what's our formula for slope? We learned that it is rise over run. So let's label the rise on this rate triangle and the run on this rate triangle. So the rise is always the vertical distance. So that's this guy here. The distance from here to here is 10 centimeters. And the run is always the horizontal distance. So the distance from here to here. So all you have to do now is plug in those values into your formula. So the slope is equal to rise, which is 10, and run, which is 18. Now, for slope, you could simplify this and calculate, and you could put 10 divided by 18 in your calculator. I would like you to get in the habit of keeping the slope in fraction form. Don't turn it into a decimal form. So we just have to reduce this fraction. So we can divide both those numbers by 2. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. 18 divided by 2 is 9. And that's as far as we can reduce. So the answer is the slope of this line is 5 over 9. So another type of question I could ask you is, instead of giving you a triangle and asking you to calculate the slope, I could give you a graph and ask you to calculate the slope between 2 points. So, question number 2. A line passes through the points -3 and 5 and 3 and 1. plot the points on the grid, draw the rate triangle, and then calculate the slope. Okay, so first thing you're going to do is plot the 2 points. So -3 and 5 is right here, and 3 and 1 is right here. And then you're going to connect the dots to form your line. Make sure you extend that line all the way across from one end of the graph to the other. Alright, now we're going to draw in our rate triangle. So basically, take the 2 points and make a triangle out of them. So here's the first point. I'm going to draw a line straight down, take a 90-degree turn to connect the second point. And there's my triangle. So now remember, the rise is the change in the vertical distance, so that's this side of the triangle. And the run is the change in the horizontal distance, so that's this side of the triangle. Okay, now we need to figure out what the distance of the rise is and what the distance of the run is. So let's start with the rise. So the rise is the distance from here to here. Okay, so it starts at 5, and then it drops down to 1. What is the difference between 5 and 1? Okay, and it's going to be 4. So the rise here is 4. But because this graph is a negative trend, right? So as you read the graph from left to right, the line is decreasing, right? It's going down and to the right. So I know it's a negative trend. So anytime it's a negative trend, I know it's also going to be a negative slope. So I need to add a negative sign for the rise, because it's not rising, it's actually decreasing. Okay, so just think, whenever you see a negative trend, it has to be a negative slope. So you're going to add in a subtraction sign in front of the rise number. Okay, let's calculate the run. So the run is from here to here. So what's that distance going to be? Okay, and it covers 6 units because it starts at -3. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to +3. Okay, so the run is going to be 6. And now we simply plug those two numbers into our calculator. So we know the rise is -4 and the run is +6. Always make sure you start something with your base equation before you plug any numbers in. Then plug in your numbers and then simplify. So I can divide those numbers each by 2. Okay, so the slope of this line is -2/3.